AP Statistics. In this video, we are going to look at example 3 in our Unit 2 notes. So we're still dealing with linear regression. Please make sure you pause this video and read the example before we move on through it, because otherwise it will be confusing. All right, so in part A, we're identifying our variables. So I've given you some data up here. I've given you destinations from Baltimore, Maryland to all of these other cities. And I've given you the distance, and I've given you the airfare. So if I were going to ask you which one's the response, which one's the explanatory variable, well, the cost of a flight generally has to do with how far away that city is. So the airfare would be something that would be predicted by the distance. So your distance is your explanatory variable and your airfare is your response variable. All right, in B, we are describing the relationship. Well, as you can see in the scatter plot here, it looks like we've got a positive, somewhat linear trend. These two little guys down here look like they might be a little bit outside the pattern of the data. So I'm going to address that when I go through my 4 characteristics that I want to address. So I want to make sure I talk about shape, unusual features, direction, and strength. So shape, I did say shape. Okay, so shape, unusual features, direction, and strength. So it looks like there's a pretty strong positive linear relationship between distance and airfare. Notice I'm always using context. I'm not just saying X and Y. And it looks like there's a couple of outliers, and then if I think there are outliers, I always address what they are, and I provide as accurate ordered pairs as I can. Those ordered pairs should be pretty easy because you've got the data right up here. You don't really have to guess what those values are because of the fact that you have the data. All right, so in part C, the correlation. So as you can see, the correlation here is 0.795. That's pretty strong. So when I interpret this, I need to address that. And all I have to do is say the association between airfare and distance is strong and positive. That's all that it's going to tell me, strength and direction. Now, the fact that R equals 0.795, does that suggest an increase in distance from Baltimore will cause prices to increase? Well, not necessarily. I mean, it could be the reason, but we don't know that for sure. There are other factors that could play into what's causing that association to occur. Because remember, just because there's a relationship does not indicate that we have causation or cause and effect. So we cannot make that assumption. All right, are there any values you think might be affecting the correlation? Well, I already addressed these when I described my relationship right up here. But let's talk about how we think they might affect the correlation. So these values right here, they do seem to be outside the overall pattern, so they may be weakening the correlation. So let me show you something. Let's see how magic I am here with my tools. So let's say I get rid of those. All right. So if they're there, I want you to notice something. All right. If they're there, my line has to accommodate them. So when I draw in a least squares regression line, it's going to be pulled down probably because of those, because they're going to act on that. But I want you to see what might happen if they're not there. Now, if I draw a line, shouldn't it be more in tune with the majority of the lines, and won't it change the correlation? It'll probably make it a little bit stronger. And by the way, just because the line changes doesn't automatically make the correlation stronger, but I want you to recognize that without those points there, all of these lines or all of these points are pretty together, except for this one right here, right? So that is actually going to strengthen the correlation if those two values were not there. Okay, so there you go. I know it's magical.